The house was silent, too silent. I sat alone in the dimly lit kitchen, tapping absent-mindedly on my phone, the soft hum of the refrigerator my only company. My parents were working the night shift, my sister was at a sleepover, and I was home alone. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows as though something was trying to get in. Then, without warning, the single light bulb above me flashed violently before dying altogether, plunging the kitchen into darkness. I froze. My heart pounded in my ears. I was reaching for my phone's flashlight when I heard it. A soft, almost deliberate thump from the hallway. My breath caught in my throat. Something had fallen, or someone had dropped something. Slowly, I stood up, phone in hand, my thumb hovering over the flashlight button. I turned it on, the weak glow barely illuminating the hallway ahead. Swallowing hard, I crept forward, each step making the old wooden floor beneath me creak. And then, the humming began. A soft, eerie melody carried from the living room. It was not the wind. It was unmistakably human. My blood ran cold. My feet felt like they were moving through quicksand as I turned the corner into the living room, my flashlight beam dancing across the walls. My breath hitched when it landed on the chair by the window. Sitting there, facing me, was my neighbor, Mrs. Elwood. A shiver clawed its way down my spine. She was just there, silent, watching. How did she get in? My mind scrambled for an answer, and then it hit me. I must have left the front door unlocked. That had to be it. I forced a breath, attempting to slow my racing heart. "Mrs. Elwood," my voice came out shaky, hesitant. "Are you okay?" She didn't answer right away. Her face was pale, eyes dark, sunken. When she finally spoke, it was in a voice so hoarse it barely reached my ears. "Water." I frowned. "What?" "I need water." My stomach twisted. She had her own house. Why would she come here for water? The air around me seemed to thicken, growing heavy, oppressive. I nodded slowly, backing away toward the kitchen. My hands trembled as I grabbed a glass and filled it at the sink. When I returned, she was still sitting there, completely still, the shadows shifting eerily around her face. Her skin looked gray under the dim light, stretched too tight over her bones, her lips barely parting as she whispered again, "Water." She took the glass without another word, sipping slowly. The night stretched on, suffocatingly quiet except for the occasional gust of wind rattling the windows. She sat in that chair for what felt like hours, her breathing shallow, her eyes unfocused. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and I drifted off to sleep on the couch. When I woke, she was gone. The next morning, my world shattered. My mother's voice was a sharp blade as she read the news over breakfast. Mrs. Elwood was found dead in her home. They estimate she passed away 72 hours ago. My fork clattered to the plate. My blood turned to ice. "No," I whispered. "That's not possible." My mother looked at me, concerned. "What do you mean?" My voice cracked. "She was here. Last night I saw her. She sat right there and drank water." Silence. My father exchanged worried glances with my mother. "Daniel, that's not funny," my dad said carefully. "I'm not joking. I saw her. I spoke to her." Panic clawed at my throat. "Check the cameras. She was here." My father sighed and pulled up the footage from the night before. I watched with pounding anticipation, but there was nothing. The living room, empty. The kitchen, empty. The chair by the window, empty. I felt the ground beneath me crumble. "No, no, no, that's wrong. She was here." My mother placed a hand on my shoulder. "Honey, maybe you imagined it. You were alone, in the dark. I'm not crazy." My voice cracked, desperation dripping from my words. "I saw her. I gave her water. I touched the glass. Are you saying I imagined that too?" My parents exchanged another worried glance. Maybe we should talk to someone, my mother suggested hesitantly. My heart pounded. What the hell is that supposed to mean? You've been under stress lately, my dad added. Hallucinations aren't uncommon when… This was real, I snapped. My family wouldn't listen. No one would. And when they insisted on taking me to the hospital, I fought them every step of the way. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and despair. The psychiatric ward was an eerie mix of sterile white walls and muffled whispers. The air was thick with the scent of something stale, and down the hall a patient muttered to himself, the sound barely above a whisper, like a warning I wasn't meant to hear. I sat in an uncomfortable chair, arms crossed, jaw tight, as the doctor studied me. Daniel, the psychiatrist began gently, your family is concerned. I'm not crazy, I interrupted. I saw her. She was real. My mother sighed beside me. Sweetheart, the mind plays tricks. I shot her a look. I know what I saw. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The doctor scribbled something down. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something. Across the hallway, through the small window in the door, stood Mrs. Elwood. I sucked in a sharp breath. My heart stopped. She was watching me. My blood ran cold as her lips curled into a slow, knowing smile. I shot to my feet, knocking the chair over. Jesus fucking Christ! The doctor blinked in alarm. Daniel! My chest heaved as I pointed toward the door. She's right there! My mother turned, her expression confused. Who? My voice dropped to a horrified whisper. Mrs. Elwood. She's here. My mother turned back to me, her eyes soft with worry. Honey, there's no one there. My breath hitched. I turned back toward the window. The hallway was empty. A cold, sinking dread clawed at my stomach. The walls seemed to close in, the sterile white suddenly suffocating. The doctor leaned forward. Daniel, I think we should talk about treatment options. I backed away, shaking my head frantically. No, I saw her. I'm not crazy. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Sweetheart, please. My vision blurred. The room spun. My mind screamed in protest, but no one believed me. And somewhere, deep in the hospital, the soft sound of humming echoed down the halls.